everybody this Sunday?
Well, Zubin, I'm here, obviously, in New England, and I will tell you the majority are Tom Brady supporters. I would say you have to search pretty hard to find those who aren't pulling for him, and it's a result of 20 years of everything he gave the organization and took the fans on a magical ride that no one could have dreamed was even possible, and also how classy he's been in terms of transitioning out of New England. You know, there's been no shots fired at any point, so fans endeared to Tom Brady here in New England.
Mike, I'm a little disappointed in you because I was anticipating you would be standing in front of Gillette Stadium, our favorite shot of you all the time when we talk about the Pats. But you're not, and I'll accept that today. I'm torn, right? I'm just the type of guy when you think about someone that's been with an organization for so long and has done so much, he's mine. Like Tom Brady, if I was a New England Patriot fan or part of the organization, like he's mine. Like we been in this thing 20 years together. Passion, I love you, we won, all of those sort of things. But to see you go to the dance with another girl, I have a different take and a different interest, right? I mean, that's just
But Key,
me.
you're not at the dance show right now.
I know.
Right? The Pats
I
are not. They're not at the dance.
it.
They're not standing there. They're at home watching the dance on Zoom.
I get it. I understand. But with that being said, Mike, what are some of your favorite memories of the Pats Super Bowls now that they're not even near it?
Key, it's such a great question, and I will tell you, I mean, first of all, the Malcolm Butler interception would be, in terms of the game, would be at the top right there with the comeback from 28-3 down against the Falcons. But really, Key, in terms of the Super Bowl, my favorite part of it would be I would just follow Tom throughout the week leading up to the game. And so we would have these marathon media sessions, 45 minutes, an hour, and I would just sort of wedge myself. You talk about standing outside of Gillette Stadium, that shot you love, Keith? Like, I would just be at Tom's podium. And one of my favorite moments would be, you know, when he would get emotional. And he had this reporter, it was a kid reporter, he was on Trent Dilfer's shoulders, and he said, "Tom, who's your hero?" And Tom responded, like with almost like his eyes moistening, "He's my dad." You know, and it was this emotional, real moment leading up to a Super Bowl. So it was stuff like that where you saw the human side of Tom leading up to these Super Bowls and just that time accumulated that you spend with him leading up to these games.
Speaking of the Super Bowl, if the Pats are to get back to the Super Bowl, will Cam Newton be on that 53-man roster next year?
I would say right now, Key, I would look in a different direction. And I think part of that was the limitations they had in the passing game. I have to believe, and I sense this, they'd like to be better in that area, and they're sort of balancing two parts. One, they didn't necessarily put Cam in the best position to succeed as a passer because of the weapons around him. At the same time, I think they're going to look at quarterbacks that maybe they envision being a little bit more efficient in that area, and there's a lot of questions as to who that might be, but I sense that they're poking around some other options.
Mm-hmm.
Mike, how challenging was this season ultimately for Bill Belichick?
Incredibly so. You know, I think, for everyone with the COVID, but they had a lot of money tied up on the salary cap. It was sort of a transition year in that sense, and so right now, you look forward, which he always does, and they have good salary cap space. And the sense here that I'm getting is that they're going to be pretty aggressive to try to, improve the talent on the roster, because what was apparent, I would think, to Bill Belichick and certainly to everyone watching the team, was that they have some notable holes that they need to fill.
So what do we think at the QB position? Are we thinking, Ryan Fitzpatrick maybe can come in, you draft a guy like Mac Jones? Are you thinking bringing Jimmy G back to the table? What do you think is the most viable option for them next year?
So much of it depends on other teams. Like you mentioned Jimmy G, and that would be a great option for them because they had him here and they know what he's all about. But is San Francisco really going to move on from him? And they can't sort of wait around to see how that happens. They have the 15th overall pick in the draft, so, Mac Jones, perhaps, if he's there, is an option they could consider. But I do think they're going to want to add a more experienced quarterback, whether they go that route or not in the draft. So it's just sort of following the musical chairs of quarterbacks around the NFL. Like, you look at a team like the Raiders with Derek Carr and Marcus Mariota. Do they keep both those guys? Maybe Mariota's a guy that the Patriots would consider. Carson Wentz discussion has been sort of percolating in media circles the last couple of days. Would the Eagles be willing to deal him sort of like the Rams did with Goff, where they give up a pick just for someone to take on the salary? So all these scenarios are, possibilities, I guess you would say, for the Patriots, but so much of it is contingent on what the other teams are thinking with these quarterbacks around the league. And then you mentioned Fitzpatrick, the free agents. I think any option like that is certainly more of a bridge to a longer-term option that they would ideally like.
Mike Reese, ESPN Patriots reporter, is joining us on Keyshawn, J. Will, and Zubin. Mike, there's been, you hear things out there, and it may not come from us at ESPN. It may come from other sources, so to speak, about trying to acquire a quarterback. I heard through a little birdie that Matthew Stafford did not want to be a New England Patriot in trade conversations. Now, whether that's true or not, do you think it's going to be very difficult to acquire a quarterback given the rich history of Tom Brady and Bill Belichick's connection, and you are following a major legend, and you have to live up to that people would just say quarterbacks and be, nah, I don't want to do that. Matt Ryan, Mariota, those guys, I don't want to do that.
Key, I don't think it's that as much as that it's just hard to find a quarterback, okay? And I'm going to actually spin it a little differently. I would be less worried about that for the Patriots than them getting a quarterback in here so they can get other players around the quarterback. So, for example, if you don't have your quarterback situation squared away at the start of free agency, and you're going after some of these top targets, like, let's say, a Hunter Henry, a tight end, or, Chris Godwin, if he makes it to the market, a receiver, that type of guy, like, those guys are going to want to know who's throwing them the football, right? Mm-hmm. And if they're deciding between the Patriots and another team that has an established quarterback, I think it's more about, like, there's just not a lot of quarterbacks to go around, Keyshawn. And Stafford, that's an interesting case. Like, I think that's more individual to a player who played in an indoor stadium and was more inclined to go to the West Coast. I think that's less about the Patriots and more about that specific individual player than a bigger picture issue that the Patriots themselves are facing.
Well, more not necessarily the organization, more about following Tom, right? Like, even though you got a year away from Tom with Cam there, you're following a guy who went to 13 championships, 6 rings. I mean, that legacy, everything you do is going to be compared to Tom Brady, whether it's right or wrong. So that's why I raised that question.
Yeah, it's a great question, and you played under the Parcells, Belichick, that whole regime, and I think the way they would answer the question is if someone doesn't want to come here because of that, we don't want them because it isn't going to be successful because you know how mentally tough you need to be to play in this type of program.
Yep.
And the last thing I would say, just as the guy that never played, the first thing I think is, hey, why not go there? Because there's no way anybody thinks you'll meet the expectations, so you might as well be able to play free and clear. That's how a non-athlete like me would think. I know you guys would always want to meet that level of expectation. Mike, there's no reason for you to be standing outside of Gillette Stadium. It's way too cold. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, I need that shot, man. What's wrong with you?
I'm going to drive out there. I feel like I let you down. I'm so sorry, Key.
That's Mike Reese, live, local, and late breaking. Mike, thank you very much.
All right, Mike. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Mike.
Keyshawn, J. Will, Zubin, brought to you by Indeed. Find quality candidates fast with Indeed Instant Match. Indeed searches through millions of resumes in their database to deliver candidates who fit your job description instantly. Claim a $75 credit on your first post at Indeed.com/credit. Terms and conditions apply. Let's go from
A to Z.
All right, back to the hair cutter.